The holographic display cast an eerie red glow across Dr. Samira Patel's face as she reviewed the data for the 100th time. Her fingers trembled as they passed through the projection, disturbing the intricate web of numbers and graphs that spelled doom for humanity. The orbital solar observatory's readings were undeniable. A massive coronal mass ejection, unprecedented in human history, would strike Earth in exactly 47 days. "Run the calculations again," she ordered the quantum computer, her voice steady despite the weight pressing down on her chest. The massive machine hummed in response, its crystalline core pulsing with stored energy as it processed the request. The results appeared seconds later, unchanged from the previous 99 attempts. Earth's magnetic field wouldn't be strong enough to deflect the incoming solar storm. The radiation would strip away the atmosphere, boil the oceans, and render the planet uninhabitable for centuries. Samira pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting back tears. As director of Earth's Defense Initiative, she had spent the last 15 years preparing for every conceivable threat. Asteroids, supervolcanoes, pandemic diseases. But this was beyond their capabilities to prevent. The soft chime of her office door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called out, quickly composing herself. Dr. Raj Kumar, her deputy director, stepped inside. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, dark circles under his eyes betraying sleepless nights. "The Security Council is assembled in the emergency chamber. They're waiting for your briefing." Samira nodded, gathering her tablet and straightening her lab coat. "How many know?" "Just the council members and essential personnel. About 30 people total." "Good. The longer we can keep this contained, the better chance we have of implementing Project Sanctuary." They walked in silence through the underground facility's stark white corridors. The Geneva complex, buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, had been designed as humanity's last line of defense. Now it would become the command center for their exodus. The Security Council chamber fell silent as Samira entered. 25 faces turned toward her, representing every major nation and coalition on Earth. These were people who typically spent their days arguing over resources and borders. Today, they would have to unite or condemn humanity to extinction. "Distinguished members of the Council," Samira began, her voice carrying across the room. 47 days from now, Earth will be struck by a solar event that will destroy all life on the surface. Our defensive systems cannot prevent this. Our bunkers cannot protect us. We have only one option: Project Sanctuary. The holographic display at the center of the room activated, showing the massive ships being constructed in secret facilities around the world. Each vessel was designed to carry 10,000 people in suspended animation to a habitable world they had discovered orbiting Proxima Centauri. "We can save 50,000 people," Samira continued, her words falling like stones in the silent chamber. 5 ships, 10,000 souls each. The ships are 95% complete, but we need every remaining resource on Earth to finish them in time. Council President Ibrahim leaned forward, his face ashen. 50,000 out of 8 billion. How do we choose? "We've developed a selection protocol," Raj explained, stepping forward. "A combination of genetic diversity, essential skills, and lottery selection to ensure fairness across all nations. Every person on Earth will have a chance, but we must begin the selection process immediately." The chamber erupted in arguments. Demands for more seats, accusations of favoritism, threats of military action. Samira slammed her hand down on the podium, the sharp crack silencing the room. "We don't have time for this," she declared. "Every minute we waste arguing is another minute closer to extinction. Either we work together, or we all die together. Those are our only options." The silence that followed was deafening. President Ibrahim looked around the room, meeting each council member's eyes before speaking. "All in favor of implementing Project Sanctuary under Dr. Patel's direction, raise your hands." One by one, hands rose into the air. Some quickly, others hesitantly, but in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would survive, even if Earth did not. As the council members filed out to begin their grim tasks, Raj approached Samira. "The selection protocol. You haven't told them about Section 7, have you?" Samira's jaw tightened. Section 7 stipulated that key project personnel, including herself and Raj, would remain behind to ensure the launches succeeded. They would never see humanity's new home. "They don't need to know yet," she whispered. "We have work to do." That night, as Samira stood at her office window watching the sunset paint the Alps in shades of gold, she thought about the weight of their decision. 50,000 people would carry humanity's future among the stars, while billions would face the end on their home world. The choosing had begun, and there was no turning back. She touched the window, feeling the cool glass against her fingertips. Somewhere out there, humanity's next chapter was waiting. They just had to survive long enough to reach it. The global lottery terminals hummed to life simultaneously across every continent, their screens displaying a simple message in hundreds of languages. Humanity's Hope Initiative. Enter now. The carefully crafted euphemism masked the terrible truth. This was a lottery for survival itself. In her command center beneath the Alps, Samira watched the numbers climb. 1 billion entries in the first hour, 2 billion by nightfall. The quantum computers processed each application, weighing genetic markers, skill sets, and the complex algorithms designed to ensure humanity's best chance for survival. Director Patel, a young technician, called out, "We're receiving reports of riots in 17 major cities. The news networks are speculating about the purpose of the lottery." Samira nodded grimly. They had anticipated this. Implement Protocol Theta. Release the cover story about a new global economic initiative. But the truth couldn't be contained forever. A week into the selection process, Dr. Aisha Rahman, head of the medical division, brought Samira the first batch of chosen survivors. 2,000 candidates have passed all screening phases, Aisha reported, her tablet displaying profiles of the selected. "We've begun sending out the notification codes." Discreetly, as ordered. Samira scrolled through the faces. A hydroponics specialist from Kenya, a structural engineer from Brazil, a pediatrician from Vietnam. Each person chosen not just for their skills, but for their genetic diversity and psychological resilience. "How are they taking the news?" Samira asked. "It varies," Aisha replied softly. "Many don't believe it at first. Some refuse to leave their families behind. We've had to disqualify 12 who attempted to expose the project." The weight of their task pressed down on them both. Every person they chose meant thousands rejected. Every family saved meant countless others condemned. In the training facilities, hidden in remote locations around the world, the chosen survivors began their preparation. They learned about their new home, a planet they named Haven, orbiting Proxima Centauri. They studied the suspended animation technology that would keep them alive during the century-long journey. They'd practiced the skills they would need to build a new civilization. Raj oversaw the training at the European facility, watching as former enemies worked side by side, united by the desperate need to ensure humanity's survival. A Russian quantum physicist collaborated with an American AI specialist. A Chinese agricultural expert taught sustainable farming techniques to a team from 6 different continents. "They're adapting better than we expected," he told Samira during their daily briefing. "The shared purpose is breaking down old rivalries." But not everyone accepted their fate quietly. 32 days before the projected impact, a group of rejected military officers attempted to seize control of one of the ships. The resulting battle left 12 dead and forced Samira to implement stricter security measures. "We should tell them about Section 7, Raj argued afterward, treating a wound on his arm from the fighting. "The ground crew deserves to know they're volunteering for a suicide mission." Samira stared at the medical bay wall, seeing the faces of her staff. Dedicated men and women who believed they were simply staying behind until the last ship launched. "Not yet," she insisted. "We need them focused and clear-headed. There's too much left to do." The selection process continued, each day bringing them closer to both salvation and doom. Families were torn apart as children were chosen and parents left behind. Lovers separated by the cruel mathematics of survival. The weight of these decisions left visible marks on everyone involved in the selection process. One evening, Samira found herself in the ship construction bay, standing before the massive vessels that would carry humanity's remnants to the stars. Each ship bore a name from Earth's mythology of hope and renewal: Phoenix, Aurora, Genesis, Horizon, and Dawn. Beautiful, aren't they? She turned to find James Chen, the lead engineer, standing beside her. His eyes reflected the ship's gleaming hulls as he spoke. "We've done everything we can to prepare them," he continued. "Double redundancy on all critical systems, the most advanced AI ever created to monitor their journey. If anything can get them to haven, these ships will. And the launch sequences, automated to the last possible moment. The ground crew will only need to maintain stability until the final countdown." He hesitated. "About that, I've seen Section 7. Samira closed her eyes. Of course he had. As lead engineer, he would have reviewed all protocols. "I understand why you did it," he said quietly. "Someone has to stay behind to ensure the launches succeed. I just want you to know, I volunteered to be part of the ground crew before I knew it was mandatory for senior staff." His words brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Here was the best of humanity. People willing to sacrifice everything to ensure others might live. The selection process concluded 40 hours before the projected impact. 50,000 names, 50,000 souls chosen to carry humanity's future among the stars. As Samira reviewed the final list, she felt the weight of both those chosen and those left behind. That night, she recorded her final personal log entry. "The choosing is complete. Now comes the hardest part, saying goodbye to Earth. May those we send to the stars forgive us for living long enough to choose who survives, and may those we leave behind forgive us for choosing at all." The first visible signs of the approaching solar storm painted the sky in waves of ghostly green and purple. Amateur astronomers posted videos of the unusual auroras, unaware they were witnessing the harbinger of Earth's doom. 20 days remained until impact. In the Geneva Complex's main control room, Samira studied the latest data from their solar observation satellites. The coronal mass ejection was even larger than their initial predictions, a wall of charged particles and radiation that would scour the planet clean of life. "Director," Raj called from his station, "we're losing contact with the Pacific observation posts. The radiation is already interfering with communications." The room fell silent as they processed this news. The effect wasn't supposed to begin for another week. The storm was accelerating. "Move up the launch sequence," Samira ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. "Begin boarding procedures immediately. Notify all facilities." Around the world, the chosen survivors were rushed to their designated ships. The Phoenix in Kazakhstan, the Aurora in Brazil, the Genesis in Australia, the Horizon in Canada, and the Dawn in South Africa. 5 arcs to carry humanity's future. But the accelerated timeline created new problems. As news of the strange atmospheric phenomena spread, panic began to take hold. Governments could no longer contain the truth. "The Chinese facility is reporting riots at their perimeter," Asia announced, her fingers flying over her console. "Military forces are responding." But she didn't need to finish. They all knew what desperate people were capable of. James Chen burst into the control room, his normally calm demeanor shattered. "The solar radiation is affecting our electronic systems. We're seeing cascading failures in the automatic loading procedures." "Switch to manual protocols," Samira commanded. "Raj, get me a direct line to all facility commanders. We need to coordinate the launches manually." As the day progressed, society began to break down. Major cities erupted in chaos as the truth about the lottery spread. Military forces around the world struggled to maintain order while protecting the launch facilities. In the midst of the growing chaos, moments of extraordinary humanity emerged. A group of rejected engineers volunteered to help repair critical systems, knowing they were working to save others instead of themselves. Military units stood their ground against overwhelming crowds, buying time for the chosen to board safely. Samira worked tirelessly, coordinating between facilities, solving problems as they arose. The radiation created new challenges by the hour. Communications became increasingly unreliable, forcing them to rely on hardened backup systems. Phoenix reports full boarding complete, Raj announced. Aurora at 93%, Genesis at 87%, Horizon and Dawn still below 70%. The radiation shields are holding, James added, but we're seeing increased stress on the external sensors. If we wait too long. Samira understood the unspoken warning. Launch too late, and the ships might not escape at all. A sudden commotion at the control room entrance drew their attention. Dr. Viktor Petrov, one of the project's leading physicists, burst in, his face ashen. The calculations, he gasped, clutching a tablet. They were wrong. The magnetic field is collapsing faster than predicted. We don't have 20 days. We have less than 5. The control room erupted in shocked whispers. Samira raised her hand for silence. How certain are you? The data is conclusive, Victor replied. The interaction between the solar storm and our magnetic field has created a cascade effect. When it fails completely, everything dies, Samira finished. She took a deep breath, then turned to her staff. New timeline. All ships must launch within 48 hours. Notify the facility commanders immediately. The next 2 days became a blur of desperate activity. Around the world, ground crews worked in shifts, fighting against failing equipment and mounting radiation levels to prepare the ships for launch. The chosen survivors, already sealed in their suspended animation chambers, slept unknowing as humanity made its last stand. Outside the facilities, soldiers fought to maintain a perimeter against increasingly desperate crowds. In the Geneva complex, Samira's team coordinated it all, running on stimulants and determination. They watched as the sky turned strange colors, as communications became more difficult, as their window for survival grew narrower by the hour. We're picking up massive solar flares, Aisha reported, her voice tense. The radiation levels are climbing exponentially. Samira looked at the faces of her team, tired, scared, but determined. They all knew what Section 7 meant now. None had fled. None had abandoned their posts. Begin final launch preparations, she ordered. It's time to give humanity its chance at a new beginning. As the countdown sequences began around the world, Samira allowed herself a moment to remember. The Earth they were about to lose. The billions who would never see another sunrise. The weight of choices that would haunt her until the end. Then she straightened her shoulders and turned back to her work. They had ships to launch, and humanity's future hung by a thread. The countdown clocks in all 5 launch facilities displayed the same numbers. 12 o'clock, 00, and counting down. Through failing communication channels, Samira could hear the voices of her facility commanders, each reporting their status with trained calm that belied the chaos surrounding them. Phoenix prep complete, all systems green. Aurora standing by, shields at maximum. Genesis reports ready. Horizon locked and loaded. Dawn awaiting final sequence. The radiation levels had climbed so high that anyone venturing outside the facility's protective shields would receive a lethal dose within minutes. The sky had turned an angry red, and strange lights flickered constantly across the horizon. Final system check, Samira ordered, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. Status report on all critical functions. James Chen's fingers flew across his console. Life support systems nominal. Suspended animation chamber stable. Navigation systems. He paused, frowning. We're seeing irregularities in the quantum guidance systems. Explain, Samira demanded. The radiation is affecting the quantum entanglement links. Without them, the ships won't be able to coordinate their launch trajectories. They could collide during escape. Raj leaned forward. Can we compensate? Not remotely, James said. Someone would need to manually calibrate each ship's guidance system right before launch. From inside the ships, the room fell silent. Going into the ships now meant certain death. The radiation shielding wouldn't be activated until launch, and the levels outside were already lethal. How many people would we need? Samira asked. 1 per ship, 5 total. Without hesitation, James stood. I'll take the Phoenix. I'll handle the Aurora, Raj said, joining him. 3 other senior engineers stepped forward, volunteering for the remaining ships. Samira looked at each of them. These heroes making one final sacrifice. You understand what this means, she said softly. They nodded. No one mentioned the families they'd never see again, the futures they were giving up. They simply gathered their tools and headed for their assigned ships. The next hour was the longest of Samira's life. She listened as each engineer reported their progress, their voices growing weaker as the radiation took its toll. Phoenix guidance calibrated, James reported, his breathing labored. It's been an honor, Director. One by one, the others completed their tasks. None of them made it back to the radiation shelters. 10 minutes to launch, Aisha announced, tears streaming down her face. The remaining ground crew worked with desperate efficiency, initiating the launch sequences their fallen colleagues had died to enable. Outside, the magnetic field was beginning to collapse completely. Soon, nothing would protect them from the full fury of the solar storm. 5 minutes. All ships report ready. Samira opened a channel to all 5 ships. This is Director Patel. When you wake, a century from now, remember this moment. Remember Earth. Remember those who stayed behind so that you could live. Make it worth the price we paid. 3 minutes, beginning final countdown. Around the world, the massive launch doors opened, exposing the ships to the deadly sky. The ground crew's radiation sensors screamed warnings as lethal particles flooded in. 2 minutes. Primary engines online. In her mind, Samira saw the faces of everyone who had brought them to this moment. The engineers who died calibrating the ships, the soldiers who held back the desperate crowds, the chosen who would carry humanity's legacy to the stars. 1 minute, all systems green. The engines roared to life, their sound drowning out the alarms and warnings. The entire facility. Before we begin our new life here, she said, her voice carrying across the silent room, we should remember those who gave everything to get us here. The holographic message sprang to life, showing Director Samira Patel's face as it had appeared over a century ago. If you're watching this, the recording began. Then humanity has found its new home. You carry with you not just our species' future, but its legacy. Every culture, every language, every dream and discovery that Earth produced lives on in you. The settlers watched, many crying openly, as Samira continued. We who stayed behind made our choice willingly. Our sacrifice was necessary, so that humanity might live on. Honor that sacrifice not through mourning, but through living. Build something new, build something better. The message ended with a list of names, everyone who had stayed behind to ensure the launches succeeded. The settlers read each name aloud, a final tribute to Earth's last heroes. The next morning, as Haven's sun rose, the first teams began their explorations. They found a world teeming with alien life, strange but not hostile. The soil was fertile, the water clean, the air eventually breathable. Within a year, the first permanent structures rose from Haven's soil. Within 5, the first child was born, a girl named Terra, in memory of the world they'd left behind. By the 10th year, the settlements had grown into true cities, each with its own character, but united in purpose. They built universities where Earth's knowledge was preserved and expanded. They created museums filled with art and artifacts from humanity's first home. They established governments that learned from Earth's mistakes, emphasizing cooperation over competition. On the 100th anniversary of the landing, Several thousand people gathered in Phoenix City's Central Plaza. Above them, a monument reached toward the stars. 5 pillars representing the ships that had carried them here, surrounding a sphere of blue and green crystal symbolizing Earth. And elderly Yuki Tanaka, now a great-grandmother, stood before the crowd. "We came here as refugees," she said, her voice still strong. "We arrived as survivors. But look at what we have become. Explorers, builders, dreamers. We have not just survived, we have thrived." She gestured to the children playing in the plaza, to the alien yet familiar city around them, to the strange but beautiful sky above. "This is our home now, but we never forget where we came from. Earth lives on in our memories, in our stories, in our determination to be worthy of those who gave everything so we could have this chance." As she spoke, Haven's sun set behind her, painting the sky in colors no Earth poet had ever described. Humanity had found its new home among the stars, carrying with it the hopes, dreams, and sacrifices of those left behind. The last launch had led to a new beginning.